So here we are. So I want to first of all say a massive thank you to Scott for first of all being here and agreeing to doing this with me, and also as well for putting up with me because we're here today, or we're going to be here consistently moving forward. Because myself and Scott, we connected a while ago on LinkedIn. We are both entrepreneurs, business owners, and that's how we connected. And then somewhere along the journey, we kind of took the relationship to the next kind of level in terms of consciousness, because we both opened up about how we are thinking and feeling, how our thought patterns are changing, and how we are developing more consciousness around, well, about who we are, the world around us. And we have literally, Scott, would you agree? I think over the last, I don't know how many months, we have been sharing voice notes almost daily on things that have been coming up for us, on things that we've been noticing, on things that we've been reading and rabbit holes that we've been going down. So we decided that we wanted to record this and put it out there for people to maybe come along this journey with us.
Absolutely. And let's be perfectly honest, everything that we're experiencing, there's lots of people out there talking about 4D, 3D, manifestations, but they're all coming from a place where they're already there. No one's actually taking you on that journey. And
Yes,
what better way to take everybody on the journey with us together as we're going through that journey ourselves?
absolutely. And just to kind of maybe give a little bit of context, do you remember where you kind of where this journey started for you? I know we've kind of touched on this because I think both of us have been on a little bit of a journey, a spiritual journey, let's say. We will delve more into all of this, I'm sure, as we go along. But do you remember where it all started?
For me, I would say that it was reading a copy of The Power by Rhonda Byrne.
Mm.
Now, I've had this copy for several years and point blank refused to read it because some of my family were into all of that. Cannot explain why a particular moment, and it was around 2 years ago. It was the beginning of 2024, and I have no idea why, but I picked up the book and read it. And I think I read it within a day or two because it's a nice, easy read. And I kept going back to it, which is not like me. I read a lot, but I just kept going through each chapter. And just kept reading the book every 20 minutes every day. So every probably 2 weeks, and I did that for a year. Um, yeah. What about yourself? How did it all start with you?
So for me, I I've always felt a little bit of defiance, I think, with regard to, I don't know, the world that we're living in and the structures and the way that I feel that it's all been set up, let's say. And I think for me, what happened, it was more, so there's always been a little bit of, oh, there is something more. And how much of what I've created in my life is actually down to my own conditioning and stuff like that. So it's always been something that's kind of, been there. But I was always, and we will go into this more, I know I keep saying this, but I was very much stuck in performative mode. I was very much stuck in fear mode. I was very much stuck in, if I don't control things, things are never going to happen. So I kept trying to squash it and squash it. But then what happened for me, about 8 months ago, I'd say things just really came to a head in terms of what I was doing around, how I was setting up my life, my business, etc. And it just forced me to kind of have a bit of space and time to reflect and think. And that's then when I started to go into, reading, researching, and talking to friends about, there is about the fact that there is something that we can't see and that we need to believe in the unseen. Again, I definitely, over the years, been guilty of doing the whole, affirmations, the whole kind of trying to manifest stuff, but never really understood what it meant until I literally probably, I wouldn't say I hit kind of rock bottom, because that actually happened quite a long time ago, and that's another story. But I hit a really sticky patch in terms of, my relationship with people around me and my business and stuff. And it kind of forced me into a corner and forced me to look at all of this a little bit more. And I think what I've just touched on there as well is something that I do want to go into today, because I want to give people kind of an idea of what it is we are about. And I think it is this thing of like, and you've said it to me before, of getting really stuck in the how. We have been trained to think that we have to have it all figured out. We have to have a plan. We have to have a blueprint. We have to know the process. And that kind of keeps us stuck, I think, in this cycle, in this rat race, in this kind of, constant, wheel of up and downness, and sometimes feeling like we're getting somewhere and then never feeling like we really are. And I suppose that's how it all started, because I realized that there was another way.
Certainly, whenever you get the opportunity to take a step back, when we really think about how things are, we're conditioned from a young age. I'm talking all the way back to probably preschool these days, or even playgroup to then school. You're conditioned into a routine, and then suddenly you are starting to see things in different contexts, in a different light. But now you're at a different place in a different timeline than what you've been used to. But now suddenly you've had all these years of conditioning to try and break a mold. And that mold is how.
Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing that's been a little bit of a game changer for me, and you mentioned timelines, is kind of getting my head a little bit. So I think there's more to it, I guess. When I got to the point where I felt like everything was kind of falling apart around me 8 months ago, I also reached out to a few people to help me kind of figure stuff out. And that's when I kind of got into it a little bit around quantum physics, and about how, like I said, there's so much more going on that we're not aware of and that we can't see. And I'd been told a lot of the times, you're an overthinker and don't stress too much and things will happen, as they're supposed to. But I didn't believe any of that, because of, like you said, you are literally, I mean, I'm also a qualified nutritionist. And when I used to talk about intuitive eating back in the day, and I used to say about how, when you think about a baby, the minute a baby is born, we are literally telling that baby not to listen to itself. We are telling it not to listen to its own intuition, to its own cues. And the example I used to use was about, the aeroplane, right? So how many times is a baby just sat there with their lips pursed shut, right? Because they know their body is telling them, I've had enough. I'm happy. Thank you very much. But as caregivers, as parents, or whoever we are to that child, how many times do we see it's, no, come on, you've not eaten enough yet. You need to eat more, because if you don't, you're not going to sleep through. If you don't, you're not going to do X, Y, Z. And so from the minute we are born, we are conditioned to not trust our own instincts. And, and I think then it just is a continuation of that, isn't it? So the people around us always know better, society, the school system, etc. So we become so detached from the essence of who we are, and think that we've got to grip so tightly onto that how. But actually, it's not about gripping on tightly to the how, it's about figuring out who you are. It's because I spoke about this, and this morning on some of my social media content, and I was talking about affirmations and manifestations, and a lot of people will go, oh, they don't work for me. Well, no, they're not going to work for you if you're still gripping onto how that's going to happen. You need to affirm what you want, and then it's all about frequency. It's all about stepping into that person, behaving like that person, and doing that just repetitively in small actions every day, rather than thinking you've got to have it all planned out and mapped out. This is who I'm going to contact. This is how I'm going to do this. This is how I'm going to do that. Because all you're doing then is you're allowing all of the right things to kind of flow and come in for you.
Funny enough, about 60 seconds ago, I was going to say something completely different to what I'm now going to say. If you think about affirmations and identity, the 3D and the 4D, and all these things that people mention, The first thing is that you've got to become that identity. So, in
Yes.
other words, you've got to build your confidence because that's fundamentally what it's about. If you've got to trust in yourself that you can be the person you want to be.
Mm.
So you now go back to what you're just saying about the baby and the parents. So only in the last week or two, there's been something in the news about there's been a study, which thankfully our taxes have helped pay for, where we've carried out a study to identify, to tell parents how long their child under the age of 5, I think it was, I can't quite remember, should spend on electronic devices like tablets per day. And I'm watching this thinking, you need somebody to tell you how to parent your child.
Mm.
But then take a step back. That's not a criticism of any parent. We're both parents. This then comes back to where we are as a whole, that how is almost creating a dependency where we forget to find our own identity. So
Yes.
if you can't find your own identity, how can you ever manifest a better world and environment for you?
Yeah. No, exactly that. And, when I look back as well, into my very recent past, the insecurities, the need to ask for approval, to ask, constantly asking people their opinion for validation, I think,
Yeah, yeah.
was so strong. And again, like you say, it's just because the way when you look at the education system, that's how we're teaching children, and to to grow, I suppose. It's not to use their creativity. It's not to really delve into the curiosity as much as we say that it is. It's no, you need to learn. This is how you need to learn. This is how you need to, this is what you need to learn. This is how you need to learn, and this is how we're going to test you. So then when we go out into the big wide world, we're still looking like, well, we need structure, we need hierarchy, we need frameworks. But for me, and I don't want to, I think we're trying to talk about kind of our journeys in this, but I also think that that's a way of kind of disempowering us, isn't it? It's a way of kind of keeping us controlled. It's a way of kind of keeping us not questioning too much what is going on. So that, I don't know, whatever, yeah, people stay in control can stay in control. But again, that's probably a conversation for another time. But I just think that, there is, but on the other hand, having said that, and I talk a lot about being stuck in the matrix, we are, we have the control over that, if you see what I'm saying. So what I mean is that we can sit here and we can become our own victims in it. We can think, well, yeah, the government are trying to control us by getting us to pay taxes or getting us to do this or get us to do X, Y, Z. But in reality, you've still got a choice as an individual, as a human being, and you have more power over that than you realize. So actually, the matrix then doesn't become about, being a victim in a bigger system. It becomes about being a victim in your own environment. And there are ways, there are always ways that you can begin to look outside of that and create a different life for yourself. We create the life that we believe is acceptable, right? We don't look within ourselves and think, actually, what life is it I want to create? How much convincing did it take for us to believe that it was okay to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, to think that money was an indicator of success over relationships and love and kindness and community? When did buying the next best, the fastest car, the poshest car, the best handbag, when did that all become an indicator of success, as opposed to all of those things that really matter, that human connection, etc.?
The experience piece.
Yeah.
The, but again, if you look at the environment today, especially in first world countries where we've created economic systems to support all the things that you've just said.
Yeah.
So we don't then create an environment to um, move away into something more or less transactional. I mean, look at our own two journeys. Neither of us have sat in a classroom to get to this point. We've gone on a self-discovery, and I use that word really, big, bold letters, self. And without that self discovery, we wouldn't be sat here doing this right now.
No, exactly. And yeah, exactly that, exactly that. And we've become, we always think, I mean, again, I always thought I needed to study more, to, you know, get stuck in the system more, to get more qualifications, when actually, like you said, it was going internal and going within and connecting with, I guess, you know, and I don't want people to think that this is in any way, shape, or form woo woo, please, but, you know, actually connecting with my higher self. And what I mean by that is actually connecting with my gut instincts, with my intuition. Because when we are, you know, we do have, and anybody, I say, you know, anybody who's read the chimp paradox will know this, you know, we've got a chimp brain, and that will keep us stuck in that kind of conformity. And actually, when you can kind of take a step out of that, and it's interesting as well. I mean, I was just voice noting one of my other friends today, and she's just got to Italy, and she said to me, literally, the minute I got here, the minute I got on the plane, she says, all of my creativity was coming through. I was getting so many downloads because I was disconnecting, or not necessarily, because I think there's a difference between, unattaching, let's say, because I think we need to detach ourselves but stay connected. Yeah. And you know, we'll talk more along those things as we go, because you need to detach yourself from end results, from, you know, from kind of all of that kind of stuff, but still stay connected to those around you. But I think, sorry, I'm going on off a little bit of a tangent. You'll get used to this. But I just said to her exactly that. I said, because you've suddenly created space, because you're suddenly not worrying about all of the day to day, you know, about getting to work on time, about, you know, paying your gas bill, about making sure your son's done his homework. All of a sudden, you're getting all these downloads. You're listening to your intuition. You're listening to who you are. You're connecting. You're reconnecting with your true self and your identity. And this is what I mean. We're living in a world that is so busy, that is just this, that we are not actually, and again, and we are, our brains are like computer systems. Yeah, they're like computer programs. They are literally operating on, you know, on default mode. And it's, you know, it's kind of, we're just not ever thinking outside of that. We're just on this constant hamster wheel and never feeling fulfilled, never feeling happy, always just waiting for the next holiday, or, you know, for the next weekend. When did that ever become a happy life?
Absolutely. And the thing is, we've become so accustomed to that, especially I think the last 50 years. You know, the economic systems have changed so much to really compound that even more.
Yeah.
And technology has allowed that to move at a rate of knots now, where we've completely lost ourselves in the daily consumption of life. I mean, you've mentioned the Matrix a few times, and we have to do a video on that. You know, that was a whole video on the Matrix. But there is a lot of parallels to that, to what we all experience. We've almost lost the ability to dream, and
Yes.
to dream big. It's almost like, you know, one of your kids says, "Oh, I want to be a pop star. I want to be a footballer. I want to be a ballerina, whatever it might be." "Oh, you can't do that. You're not good enough. You're not, you know." Teachers tell you this. You're not good enough. People around you, your friends, and that keeps you within the 3D. It keeps you within that environment of the how, because you have to be surrounded by the people and other like-minded people who will give you the confidence to go within to fulfill your dreams.
Exactly that. And that piece about, we, you know, are no longer dreaming, you know, that means that we're no longer consciously creating our own lives. And when you look at anything, everything starts with a thought. You know, a thought is matter, right? And if we can't dream big, you know, if we can't create those thoughts, they're never going to become our reality. And the other thing as well, you know, is, again, we've been so conditioned to think realistically, you know, and actually, when you look at anybody who's achieved great things, I was talking to my son about this at the weekend. So he's become a little bit jaded when it comes to football. And, at one point he was like, he's going to be a footballer. And now all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'm never going to be never going to be a professional footballer. So what's the point? And I was like, do you think Ronaldo, thought like that? Do you think, that anybody who has become, and I'm not just talking about sports people, but anybody who has achieved what it is that they wanted to achieve, what they set out to achieve, didn't let outside experiences, didn't let any of that outside noise detach them, or disconnect them from their vision, from their idea, from their dream. In their mind, they were always going to achieve it. They were always going to win. They were always going to get there. That's what makes them different, not necessarily the skills. Michael Jordan, the same. I was listening to something the other day, and it talked about how Michael Jordan, I'm not a sports person, at all, but I was reading, or I watched a video, and it said that there was a particular game, and I don't know what it was, but he got really poorly the night before a game. I think he got food poisoning. He was really, really poorly. He was being sick the day of the game. He was literally, everybody was like, he's never going to play. He's an absolute mess. He was physically being sick. He was physically very weak, but in his head, he was doing it. In his head, he was going to show up, and in his head, he was going to play. And I think he started playing, and I think to begin with, everyone was like, oh no, he can't do this. And then all of a sudden, I don't know whether it got to a particular moment in the game, but all of a sudden he became brilliant, and he played despite all of that. And what, the point here is that he didn't let, the fact, he didn't let kind of that 3D detach him from what his reality was, and he smashed it. And and this is what I mean by we forget just how powerful our minds are. And if we something that's really stuck with me is that if we are able to dream it, if we are able to visualize it, that means that it's already available to us. We just need to align what we are doing and who we are with it.
Well, I mean, I firmly believe that the moment we have a desire, a want, a dream, whatever it may be, and the moment we can put time and effort into making that become part of our consciousness, then we can achieve that. And I don't know why, but I genuinely believe that our bodies are just a host. Everyone talks about your heart and your soul, but actually your mind is the most powerful part of your entire body.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
I as you know, I'm not religious. And when people talk about God and the planet and being in tune with the planet and things like that, I don't have a view either way. But what I would say is that the universe is so big. Again, are we downplaying our capability? You just said only a few minutes ago about what we can imagine, but do we sometimes imagine too little? We should,
Yes.
think bigger.
Yeah, of course. I absolutely do believe that we do imagine too little. And have I lost you? Are you still there?
I'm still here.
I've just lost your visual. I can't see you. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Yeah. Oh, there we are. There we are. Yeah, we absolutely. Oh, that's another route. That's another thing we need to do on another day, actually, because I was about, seeing and hearing, and how we're not taking in all of the information, we're processing it, using it again. We actually only see light, don't we? And our brain then creates the images. But that's another thing. Yeah, that's for another day. That is for another day. But that kind of, it just again emphasizes this point that what is really real. Is it what's out here, or is it what's in here? Right? Now, for me, it's what's in here. For me, it is. And if we're able to download something, if we're able to see something, then it's possible, and it's happening in another, in another timeline, right? And like you said there, but what happens is again, we are taught, when we're born, we believe we can fly. You've already said this. We believe we can fly. We believe we can be Batman. We believe we can be a unit, whatever. And the reason that we then end up dreaming smaller as we get older is because we're told that that is not the case. I had it even recently, and I was talking about one of my goals, and someone in my family was a little bit like, yeah, you're being a bit unrealistic there, aren't you, Rebecca? And I'm like, don't even go there. Don't you even dare go there, because I listened to all of that rhetoric far too much as a child. But going back to what you said about the universe and it being huge, and about religion and stuff like that, again, I think that's a conversation for another day, because I have my own thoughts and feelings around that, and I'm on my own journey with all of that. But I do believe that whenever, you think when we talk about the universe, look at how perfectly created it is. It's created to perfection. The sun rises every day and it sets every day. The moon comes out every evening. A new day always starts. And it's just, everything is so, nothing for me. I just don't think anything is by chance. I don't think anything is by accident. And I also believe that we are all connected in that perfect creation, that universe. It's within all of us. And I think that the world that we're living in right now has, it's divided us. We are no longer operating as, as being all connected. We've become very divided. And that's, again, where we lose ourselves. Again, I was listening to something recently, and this definitely struck a chord with me, because it was like, especially people like you and I that suddenly find ourselves on this journey, we feel like then we can change the whole world, right? And what we forget is, and don't get me wrong, I'm definitely on a mission to change the world, right? Or make the world a better place, let's say. But in the pursuit of that, we end up forgetting just those 5 core people around us and how important they are, and how important that community is. And actually, if we could just focus on, on those people, it then has a ripple effect, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this everybody's got an inner circle. It doesn't matter how many people are in that, but everybody's got one, regardless of the size, as I've said. But how many people in that inner circle are the ones who are constantly elevating you to support you beyond your own expectations? And that is the bit where most people, whether they've got 5, 10, 50, or 100 within their inner circle, probably can count on one hand, maybe only one finger, the amount of people in their inner circle who are truly championing them to be beyond their own expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that. But also, as well, isn't it interesting? Because, we all know that you become the sum of the, what is it, the 5, like, we keep going back to 5, but I can't remember exactly what it is, but you end up becoming the people that you surround yourself with. Yeah, you end up becoming the environment that you're in. And if you're in an environment where, exactly what you said, people are always putting limits on what you can do, then you're going to end up believing that, and becoming that, I guess. So it's really important to be aware of who. I think it depends where you are on your journey, because I think, yes, you need to surround yourselves with people who you aspire to be, with people that, are going to encourage you and motivate you to literally, smash all of the limits you ever put on yourself. But also, as well, I think, you're going to have people around you that don't think like you, that maybe think a little bit differently. But again, this is the bit about being detaching yourself from that, yet staying connected.
Which brings perfectly back to with what you've just said there, brings to me full circle back to the how.
Yeah.
Because that environment then goes full circle back to how can I do this? How is that possible? How am I going to do this? And this then comes full circle back again about it all starts within, and it's within your mind, and your mind only is that you're the only person who can make the magic happen.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And that was a massive moment for me when I realized that, because I think I've spoken to you about this before, about how at one point when I was looking at my business, I was constantly looking at the best way to, how do I market? How do I sell? How do I do X, Y, Z? And all that happened is that I was just digging myself into a deep hole, and things were just becoming more difficult. And it wasn't until I took a step out of that and was, actually, I'm just going to do this my way. I think this might have been some of the first things we started speaking about, actually.
Probably, yeah.
And it was like, do you know what? I'm sick of everyone telling me how to do things. because all it's doing is creating. I thought I was a really anxious person. And what I've realized is I'm not an anxious person. I'd identified as one. Okay. But in reality, it was actually, you know, my intuition was just, this isn't right. Listen to it. You know, it's not because you're an anxious person. It's because what you're doing isn't aligned. So it wasn't anxiety. It was a lack of alignment, misalignment.
So I'm going to share with everybody, hopefully a few people will watch this. So we decided to start doing these videos, and we've got no scripts, no agenda. And one, I wouldn't say we're winging it, but we today I would say we've explored quite a few things.
Yeah.
However, Rebecca, this morning, I started getting voice notes. Right, what should we do for the agenda? What should we do for this? But let's be honest, it's been really hard to go, no, stop, that's not what we're doing, because we've been conditioned with our careers and lives, and whether it's professional or, you know, even when you become parents, don't do this, don't do that to the kids, suddenly to go, you know what, we just need to do what we're doing right now.
Show up, presence over performance.
Yeah.
That is going to be the theme moving forward with all of these videos, isn't it? We're just going to
Absolutely
go into, you know, into more of these things, into hopefully people will take away some key points, and yeah, we're gonna, it's not scripted. I'd love, you know, we're gonna have millions of viewers, and I would love, you know, for people to start asking questions, to comment, so that we can really pick up on some of the things that people are thinking and feeling right now.
Absolutely. And that becomes almost our content for each video. The more people participate in feedback on these videos, the more we can then discuss our journeys against those kind of questions and views and thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Should we wrap it up there for today?
I reckon so. That's a good point to do that.
I think so. I think we've gone full circle, haven't we? But thank you so much. Just an introduction into how we are thinking. That came out as think, because I was going to say feeling and thinking all in one go.
That's a mouthful and a half.
Yeah. That's a wrap for today. Thank you so much to anybody who is listening, whether that is now, whether that is at some point in the future. Although, here's another bit of information to blow your mind: time is not linear.
That's a little time.
But if you do tune in, please make sure that you do comment, because if this does land on your feed, it's meant to. There's a reason for it. But thanks so much, Scott.
And you, Rebecca. Speak soon.
Yeah.